Thank you for sticking around towards the end of the summit here. It's been a great time here. And today, as CEO of Tidex, I want to share with you guys some information and stats about Web3 and how that's going to be affecting cryptocurrency and some of the exchanges. And at the end, I will have 5 minutes for a quick Q&A for anyone who has any questions. So our team at Tidex have put together some stats to show what Web3 is. And a lot of people hear about Web3, but they don't really have a clue what it is. So I'll do a quick overview on that. Pressing this button. There we go. So I want a show of hands for people who remember when Web 1.0 came out. And we're talking about Netscape, we're talking about different private chat rooms that you guys can have, chatting with friends, and the dial-up internet, the modem that made all the sound. I want to see a show of hands if you've been around during that time. Wow, okay, a lot more in the middle here. And you guys are the old ones, right? You guys are the old ones like me. And then now we are in Web 2.0. Web 2.0 kind of came out where the Apple and the Google came out with the apps, which allowed users to input and become part of the internet. So they were able to participate in Web 2. And this is kind of the spot where we're now. And now we're starting to reach the end of the Web 2 era, and we're starting to cross that chasm into Web 3. Now, what is Web 3? With the development of blockchain, basically, Web 3 is the internet built on blockchain. So with that said, what's going to happen to the internet coming up in the future? It's being developed as we speak, and it's going to have a great impact on how you use the internet. Am I going to have a bad time with this remote all day? All right. So I want to have you guys take a look at some market comparisons, just to have an idea of where Web3 might be coming up. So if you're looking at the crypto market just as a whole, some of the macro, crypto market is only $1 trillion compared to the international stock market, which currently sits around $93 trillion. So do you think that cryptocurrency market has a lot of room to grow? I think you guys can decide for yourself on that. I personally think for sure. If you look at Web 1.0, $1 trillion was the overall market cap at the time. And as we moved into Web 2.0, it 6x'd now to currently about $6 trillion. Now, continuing that trend, with the development of Web 3 and blockchain and cryptocurrencies and all of the technology associated, where do you think the market cap will be for Web 3? Okay, so keep an eye on Web 3 for sure. Looking at some exchange data, you can see that centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, the trading volume for the two, basically, all the way until the DeFi movement in the middle of 2020, centralized exchanges had all of the volume for the crypto market. And as the DeFi movement proceeded forward, and DeFi being basically it's part of Web3, you can see the volume of DeFi and DEXs starting to take over on the volume. Now, this is kind of proof to show what people want, and the development of Web3 is a direct reflection of what people want. Okay? So that's some data there. So I want to kind of compare some data between DEXs and CEXs, okay, CEXs. So there are pros and cons of centralized exchanges versus decentralized exchanges. So obviously some of these centralized exchanges, the advantages is having the liquidity. And as traders, liquidity is the most important thing because they want to make sure their trades execute when they want it to execute. So centralized exchanges definitely has an advantage of that. over decentralized exchanges currently. Now, lower transaction fees. This might change in the future, but currently transaction fees on centralized exchanges are still a lot lower, decentralized exchanges, especially with the current gas fees of Ethereum. And then the user interface and the tools associated with centralized exchanges are definitely a lot better as well. A lot easier to use, a lot more control in how that develops. However, with centralized exchanges, there are a lot more compliance issues. And being that it's a centralized entity, there are risks of personal data leaks, right? Centralized exchanges have your passport, they have your name, they have your email, they have your phone number a lot of times, okay? Versus decentralized exchanges, which don't have any of that. So some of the pros is there's no KYC needed, they don't have too much of your personal data, which is a huge issue for Web 2. And with that, is improved safety for a user. You don't have the risk of those kind of hacks and data leaks. And then there's also a wider selection of tokens. Because decentralized exchanges, any project can go on there and list their tokens, start their own liquidity pools. So we have a huge selection of project tokens on decentralized exchanges. However, currently, the volume, especially for the smaller projects, the liquidity is an issue. So when you want to execute a trade, a lot of times you'll find problems on decentralized exchanges, even on Uniswap, even on PancakeSwap, and even on a platform like Waves. The fees tend to be higher depending on the platform and the blockchain that it's on. And then usually the platform itself is a lot less user-friendly. I think for a lot of the crypto veterans, decentralized exchanges are pretty easy to use. But imagine as a newbie coming across a decentralized exchange, having to manage a wallet and being able to execute trades, a lot harder to do. Going into as far as regulation goes of Web3, you can see kind of a general overview of the map, and the red, which is countries that have made cryptocurrencies illegal, has become less and less over the years. Having been in the industry since 2016, I have seen this map several times a year, and the red on these maps have become less and less, which tells you that the world is very receptive of cryptocurrencies, and they realize that regulation is very, very important for the development of Web3 in the future. Now, if there was no regulation in cryptocurrencies, that will hurt, obviously, investors. There's a lot of risk with the recent meltdown and the untethering of Luna, which had a chain reaction to 3 hours. A lot of people have been talking about that. Very, very dangerous for the cryptocurrency market. So with that, expect harsh and draconian regulation to come out from the regulators because of this, especially on the stablecoin regulations. So there's the key to good regulation, which we've heard a lot of talk about regulation. Una earlier had some great points on regulation. The key to regulation is that there is no regulation is not good. A lot of regulation, obviously not good because it will inhibit growth, right? Who wants to invest? Which kind of institution wants to invest in cryptocurrencies and in blockchain if the regulations are not clear? Because by the time they invent something or they develop something and they pour all this money into blockchain and then the regulation is not clear, it changes, then they could lose all that investment. So you can see from both sides where the risks are. So the key to regulation is not no regulation or a lot of regulation, it's about sensible regulation. And there's a fine balance, and this is what a lot of tug and pull. So right after something like the Luna crash, you will see a harsh, a very draconian regulation come in, and then later on they might lessen up and ease up on it, and then there will be a little bit less regulation, right? But when you have a situation where back in 2017, there were a lot of ICOs and a lot of people got scammed, right? When you have those kind of things with no regulation, obviously it makes the crypto industry seem like the wild, wild west, which is not what we want, right? Now, what does this mean for exchanges? So I think the key with centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges lies in custody. So with centralized exchanges, the custody and the private keys belong to the exchange. So a lot of people who have their currencies on an exchange, it's not the safest way to keep, and I'm sure you guys know that, right? A lot of people will recommend you to keep your cryptocurrencies on a hardware wallet, or maybe something a little bit easier on a hot wallet where only you have the private keys. Now with decentralized exchanges, you have the private keys for that. You have to manage your own wallet. There is risks of losing your funds if you lose your private keys, or if you give away your mnemonic codes to a scammer, right? So don't do that. So where will Web3 kind of help us develop in terms of exchanges? Well, I think custody is a big one. I think if we want both to exist, we need to develop custody where people on centralized exchanges have custody over their tokens. So they don't feel that they're taking the risk to leave their money on a centralized exchange. So something like that might be happening in terms of Web3. Also, what Binance has been doing, for instance. Binance started out as a centralized exchange, and then soon, after a few years, they came out with Binance Smart Chain, right? And then they have PancakeSwap as some of the decentralized exchanges. So how does that help Binance? It helps with the BNB ecosystem. To use PancakeSwap and Binance Smart Chain, you have to have the BNB token. So expect a lot of centralized exchanges to come out with their own blockchains as development becomes easier and easier, and people become more and more skilled at building blockchains. Centralized exchanges will start coming out with their own decentralized exchanges to build out their ecosystem. And more importantly, to keep them separately is not the best thing to do. So what some people have been saying is to have the interoperability between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges, okay? Where it's easy for custody, it might help with custody where if you're on a centralized exchange after you've traded, to move your funds very quickly and easily into your decentralized wallet, your own personal hardware wallet, okay? Now, what does Web3 mean to you? We have basically internet right now is very, very centralized. So the internet is going to be, for the future for Web3, you're going to see a lot of decentralized internet entities on the Web3. So you're going to see less of tech giants, okay? You're going to have new platforms such as different search engines that are going to be decentralized. So Google might be a thing of the past in the future, right? And then you're going to have different social media platforms. And right now, if you're using social media, a lot of these platforms and chat platforms, they don't communicate with each other because they're separate companies. But in Web3 in the future, with the use of your cryptocurrency wallet, that is your identity. And you can access a slew of different platforms with just one account. So you no longer, in Web3, will have to remember the username and the password for this and losing all that. All you need to do is have your cryptocurrency wallet. That is the future of the internet. Also, the future of the internet, and I think most importantly above all, is the ownership. Okay? Web2 right now is owned by all the conglomerates. We are the products of Web2. So Facebook and IG and YouTube, we are the product, right? We are the ones that they are basically mining for our attention and the views and everything and the clicks. So in Web3, you will become everything that you own, whether it's the data, your attention, to an ad, you're gonna own. So what it's gonna allow you to do is to earn. So because you earn that, they will tokenize and they will give you rewards for these kind of things in Web3. And from there, that can increase the value of your wealth, right? So your wealth could increase through that, and also you're basically cutting out the middleman, right? And also you will have say, as a lot of tokens have governance rights, you will have say to vote and to say how the company should develop. The key here is to be ahead of the curve in Web3, and also by being ahead of the curve, you will place your bet. You should place your bet on Web3 and the future of cryptocurrency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your speech. It was very, very useful.